So this lecture is about introduced light, which can be tricky and not always what it seems. Take this sequence. This is a series of pictures that are a complete lie. Now these are bumblebees and they are on sunflowers, but you would not believe how this day looked. It looks like it's a total studio thing, doesn't it? Totally. You want to know how it really looked? I'll show you how it really looked. It was that. Can you believe that? It's hard to believe, isn't it? This is more of an exact exposure, but I tell you what, the first shots looked like they were shot in a studio on a sunshiny day, whatever, but it was on a rainy day. It was raining, actually. So how did this happen? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. In this case, I slowed the shutter down so much, and the flash is just a fast burst, remember, but I slowed the ambient light source down so much with my shutter speed that gray sky turned white. I way overexposed the sky. Then when I hit the scene with the flash, it illuminated the flower and the bees perfectly. Weird, huh? Really weird. Well, sometimes you have to bring your own light to the party. When found or ambient light isn't enough, man-made light can get the job done. Don't be afraid to craft the light when you need to. You don't have to just accept what's there. Move around and see where the best light is. Move lamps, shift subjects, drag that shutter, slow the shutter down. If you actually get out a supplemental light and work it and craft it like a flash at the right times of day, it shows that you have done your homework, and man, it really pays off sometimes. So this is a shot of my sleeping daughter. She's wearing some Cinderella dress we got at a thrift store probably. This is lit with just a reading light, one of my favorite ways to do it. Just a single tungsten light bulb off in the corner of the room. The light's got a shade on it though, which makes the light very, very soft. I put my camera on a tripod because I would have to have a very slow exposure, very slow shutter speed. I didn't want the camera jiggling in any way. And there you go. It's a very simple picture. It's very subtly lit with a warm little light, and she's not griping because she's unconscious. That helps a lot. Okay, same thing with this in a way. It's just lit with a little reading light. Now my white balance changed a little bit. I'm correcting the yellow a little bit here with more of an auto white balance setting. And granted, I had to stand directly over them, but they ignore me by now. My little boy Spencer, he really likes to be with his mother, and she's trying to sing him to sleep here. I don't think he felt that well that night. But even in that sea of blankets and pillows, they stand out because that light really helps to craft them and to define them. It really does. It's the light that really speaks to us. Light's all we have, really. Light is how we build our photographs. You would not believe how many pictures I've shot this way with table lamps and reading lamps. You would not believe it. I mean, that again, that's just using a normal daylight setting. Look at how rich and warm that light is. As long as the light has a shade on it, if it's a tungsten bulb, one of your round light bulbs, that's really nice light. But if they don't have a shade on them, the light's going to be really harsh, so you have to watch that. You really do. Look at this. Just a tungsten light with some Christmas lights in the background. There's no reason you can't be shooting this way at home. Really easy. Now, modern cameras can shoot in very low light levels. You can create a beautiful mood in your pictures off of small light sources like reading lamps, very easily. Now, all these lamps are off to the side, and that's part of the reason they work so nicely. Think about the sun. When the sun's directly overhead, it creates these really harsh shadows, doesn't it? But if the sun's on the horizon, lower, it's a very nice, pleasing light, more directional that way. Overhead lighting, like normal lighting fixtures, where the light's coming down from above, not so great, not so great. So you can do the same thing with lights in your home. If the light's overhead, unless someone's looking up in the light, it's not such a great look. If the light's off to the side, like light from table lamps at about eye level, beautiful and soft, that is lovely, lovely. Let's look at a couple more. It's great that I've been a photographer so long. I have all these pictures to show you guys. Firelight. Firelight's wonderful, especially when it's late in the day and there's hardly any light left in the sky. Usually the firelight's going to be off to one side or lower on the ground, lower in the frame, right? Sunset too, when it's coming in sideways, that's great. Again, modern cameras can handle these really low light levels like this. With the right adjustment of shutter speed and aperture, it is just beautiful light. Just lovely. It's very, very hard to beat it. It really is. I'd like you to think about taking advantage of unusual light sources too. What do I mean by unusual light sources? Well, how about this one? You know, that's lit. Car tail lights. Car tail lights. My son was taking this picture when a farm couple we know drove by and they saw us and they stopped. And they said, we'll get out of your way. And I said, what? No way. This is a couple that was on their way home to Cortland, Nebraska, to their farms, a couple that I know. They stepped on their brakes before shifting it into gear, and I saw this light on Kathy, and I thought, wait, back up. And that's what lit us. That's what I want. I wanted that light. It was after the sun had set for a while. It was dark enough now, and we got a little hint of red, and that lit us up just beautifully. By the way, that's them. That's them. Did the same picture of them in their taillights as well, looking the other way. Actually, in the bounce from their headlights, it looks like, doesn't it? Nice. Taillights, headlights, it's okay. It's all a big experiment, right? Keep your eye out for unusual light sources whenever you can. Try different things, experiment. That's why it's so fun. Even for me, after all these years, it's really fun every day. I love it. We call something that stays on a light source a continuous light source, by the way, like the reading lamps or even car tail lights or headlights, continuous light sources. Here's another shot taken with a continuous light source, this time a spotlight on a lion in a tree in Uganda's Albertine Rift. This is a clear-cut example of introduced light. Even better, it shows what you can do with introduced light. You can use it without needing a ton of gear and getting real technical. That's nice. This is a lion picture. I guess it represents something like Zen in lighting. Very, very minimalist approach with good results. Plus, there's a little story to it. Here's how we got this picture. I was out with a lion researcher, and we knew there were a pair of male lions sleeping in this tree. One of them was radio collared. The researcher knew that. At a store back in Nebraska, I'd bought a 2 million candle power floodlight, which ran off the cigarette lighter in our vehicle. We knew lions were nocturnal. I thought, I'll bring this floodlight. You never know what we could use it for. We thought, if these lions slept until it was dark enough for us to use this light and light them up in the tree, this might make a picture. I was hoping that there would be some ambient light in the sky. So we parked there and waited for about an hour and a half till the lions started to move around us as it got dark. Sure enough, a female lion roared in the distance. And this male stood, and we popped the spotlight on him and lit him up for a second. Before the spotlight, you'd barely see him up there, but that introduced light really made him pop. That cheap little light, 17, 18 bucks plus tax, made this lion stand out in the tree very, very well. And without that introduced light, you wouldn't have been able to see him. You wouldn't have a picture. No way. You wouldn't have had a picture that led the story in National Geographic, certainly. But this picture works because of the time of the day, and we introduced the light, right? By the way, you may see this picture several times in the course because it's one of the few that I've ever been happy with, but a very simply done thing. You know the best part of all this, don't you, is that you can do this too. A spotlight and the right time of day, that's all you need. That's simple, really simple. So now, don't forget too, there are other ways to introduce light to your subject as well. A reflector counts also, a reflector. Now check this out. I used to think reflectors were too Hollywood. You can pick them up at a camera store. But now I use reflectors quite a bit. Watch this. Stand back. This thing's spring-loaded. Look at that. Holy cow. Pretty beat up, too. Kind of dirty. I don't think I can send it to the laundromat. I use reflectors all the time to fill in shadows. Constantly do. Constantly. Here's the best part. Watch this. Watch this. I got this trick. Oh, man, I'm just like a magician. We'll roll that off. All right, so I use reflectors all the time. All the time. Here's a little flower. This flower is a 1/2 inch tall tops. I shade the subject near the sun. I put that reflector right in the sun, and I kick a little bit of light on. Oh, it looks like firelight. It's lovely. That's in the middle of the harshest light you can imagine out in the desert. The reflector has a white side and a gold side. I like that gold side the best. I seldom use just the white side or the silver side. I love that gold look. Super easy and cheap. Nothing to it. It's tough to hold a reflector and shoot at the same time, though. Try to get a friend to help you so you can really see the effect of the reflector. When else have I used a reflector? Lots of times. This is using a little gold reflector off to the side. My wife's holding it here as daughter Ellen picks petals off of daisies. In these photos, you can actually see the gold on her upper arm or the side where that reflector's coming in. You can see the gold on her face, right in there. Easy to see because the sun's actually coming from behind her, isn't it? The sun's all back here. That's all reflector. And that reflector is right there off the camera. Easy. If you don't have a reflector, you can use something as simple as a white poster board or even a t-shirt. You can use anything to bounce bright light. Remember, this is another fun thing. The light that's bouncing is going to pick up the color of whatever you're bouncing it off of. So if you hold up an orange t-shirt, to someone who's in the shade and that orange t-shirt is a little bit in the sun, it's going to throw off orange light onto them. Very cool. If it's a yellow shirt, it will throw yellow light onto them. Red, same way. Be a really interesting effect, but be aware. Chimp the back, look at the back of the camera, check things out, make sure you know what you're doing. Let's talk about flash now. The other main kind of introduced light is flash. It is not considered a continuous light because it only lasts an instant, a little burst. Whereas a continuous light source like a table lamp, car tail lights, those last for a while, however long you want them to last. I like continuous light sources because you can really craft them and you can actually see what the shadows and highlights are doing. But with digital now, you can do the same thing with flash. You can look at the back of the camera and see what it's doing too. Check that histogram. You can do that with non-continuous lights, obviously, but you really have to look. I can't say it enough. Flash can really ruin your pictures, so I'm cautioning you, look, check the back of the camera, check it. Now, entire books, blogs, you name it, have been written about flash. I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't a master's thesis or two written about flash. Modern flashes use strobe lighting, a super intense burst of light that lasts just a microsecond, just hardly anything. A couple of frames here. Just a little burst of me and baby Spencer. Just a little flash burst. Somebody else's flash going off. I'm not using flash at all. Somebody else's flash going off there. Huh. How did we get to flash anyway? Well, the flash was invented by this man, Harold Doc Edgerton. He's a Nebraskan, proud to say. He's an inventor from my home state. I got to meet him at the end of his life. He was speaking at the University of Nebraska campus when I was in college. And I remember going to his lecture, and afterwards, we were standing around out in the hallway talking to him, my photography instructors and I, because it was a big deal, him coming to town. And a young lady showed up late to the lecture. She'd completely missed it, in fact. She was from the college newspaper, the Daily Nebraskan, and she was assigned to get a picture of Doc Edgerton. We all called him Doc. She had no clue who he was. She just had a little slip of an assignment sheet saying, go get a picture of this guy. She had a flash on top of her camera. It was an old Vivitar 283 model, as I recall. He was so nice and funny, and he asked her about the flash and kind of smiling because he knew she'd missed the lecture. He said, what's that thing do? And she said, well, this is a flash. And he says, a flash? Well, what's that? And she said, well, it puts light on you in dark situations. And Doc said, well, I'm in a pretty dark situation in this hallway. Could you use that thing on me? Will it hurt my eyes? She says, no, it won't hurt your eyes a bit. It's really safe. It'll light you up really well. And so Doc Edgerton, the guy that invented the flash, says, okay, let's try it then. I'm ready. And he made this big show out of it. And so she counted to 3 and she lit him up and she took like 1 or 2 pictures and she walked away happy. And he looked and he winked at me. He actually winked at me, the guy that invented the flash. I was so impressed by that he was kind to her, not embarrassing to her at all, and yet he had a little fun at the same time. But I digress. What a great guy. Listen, flash comes on and off in such a short amount of time that it can really hurt you, actually. As wonderful as flash is, it can really hurt your subjects. You can bleach them out if done wrong. It is brutal. In fact, I would argue that people are better off never using their flash rather than ruining every situation they come across when they take it out because they can't control it. I would argue that. Well, let's see. Yeah, like this. This is my dog Muldoon. This is typical for a flash. Look at this. It's just blowing out everything. The highlights are blown out. Absolutely terrible. Just awful. Terrible. Another thing, light from flash is cooler in color, has a natural blue feel. By that, I don't mean hip or funky, right? It's just the color's not quite right. It's not daylight most of the time. It's a little bit bluish to me. You might have a little flash pop up on your camera, even if it's more of a point and shoot style. It might come up automatically. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing to use. So what's the secret? Soft flash, or what I call fill flash. Using the flash to subtly get just enough light from that flash, but not too much. That requires some time and some thought. It's no big deal, but you actually have to think about it. You have to really craft that light. What does it mean to craft the light? Watch how I work this scene. Again, I'm at Raptor Recovery, Nebraska. I'll start with just aiming a flash at the bird and then working through some options until we get a really lovely photograph with just the right amount of soft or fill flash. Watch this. Okay, so we're out with Janet and a lovely European barn owl. Janet, did you know you have feathers stuck in your hair? Yes. You do. Okay, so we have a direct flash. We're going to talk about flash. You know, this is a situation that's fairly well lit. And you would think, well, why would you need flash? Well, I'll use flash all the time to fill in shadows and to darken backgrounds. I do that all the time. I love the dramatic effect it gives. And we're going to start out with kind of the worst technique for flash. It's called direct flash. Flash is bolted to the top of the camera. A lot of your point and shoots will have direct flash too. You won't have a choice. It'll just be a flash built in. Even the owl hates the term direct flash, I can tell. So you'll have a flash built into a point and shoot, right? And it just blasts the subject. Remember, the farther back you are, the harsher the light. So we're just going to do things, as I would say, the wrong way. I guess really wrong would be trying to bounce the flash. What would you bounce it off of? It's good technique for on a ceiling in a room, but for here, we're just going to fire away. Be back here, blast away. All right, so I can see right now I don't like it. It's very harsh. It's a very harsh technique, straight on, okay? So how can we do this on the cheap and get this flash so it looks a little bit better? Well, one technique is to get the flash off of the camera. Get it off. We do that by using a sync cord, or a lot of cameras will talk wirelessly, remotely, back to your camera. Keep this simple. We're going to do this with a little bit of a sync cord. We're going to get this off to the side. It'll make it a little bit better, I think. A little bit more directional on the light. Still kind of harsh though. What can we do to make it better? Oh, we can take a Kleenex, look at this, or a napkin, put it right, hopefully not a used napkin or a used Kleenex, put it off to the side with this wrapped around it. This is called a diffusing device. It's simple. The front of the flash has a little diffuser on it, but that's not enough. Let's diffuse it through a napkin or a tissue, whatever. Let's put it off to the side and let's see how that looks. All right, let's try this. A little bit better. I can already see it's better. Isn't that something? All right, so we wait till the owl looks. We get the eye, that's fine. And you know what? I'm exposing that sky down. I'm turning the house lights down with my shutter and with my aperture here. It's one thing I can do. I'm going to darken it just a bit, make that sky a little bit more dark, and make it more dramatic. We like dramatic. We like the owl to look at us too, but we just have to wait. There we go. Nice. All right, good. Okay, so nice and subtle. Very nice, very nice. Now, the Cadillac of lighting, is what I call a softbox. This is a softbox. It's 50 bucks, maybe. Really easy to use. It's just a little piece of cloth that goes over a wire frame. You kind of bracket it. You take the bottom of the sync cord, has a little screw hole in it, a little 1/4-20 screw hole, and you get a little nut that comes with it, and you mount that flash right to the bottom. And what this does is it really, really spreads the light out well and diffuses the light. And that's key, is you want it to soften up, always soften up. You can't have the light too soft, really. And you know what's amazing? The look that you get with this, if you hold this close enough to the subject, the look that you get from this is as good as if you had a $1,000 lighting kit. You just have to have it close to the subject. So let's try this. We're going to put it right here, and we're going to see how this looks. Now that's just lovely. I mean lovely. It looks like $1,000,000. And then also we want to move the light around from underneath, off to the side, from overhead. We're going to dial the light down. We can dial the light up and down, meaning make it brighter and darker, just on the back of the flash. You use TTL through the lens, or you could put it on manual. The beauty of a digital camera is you can look right at the back of the camera, check the histogram, just look at it and see how it looks to you. That's great. Such an improvement over film to be able to actually see what flash is doing. So we're going to do this. Look at that, just lovely. Go overhead. There you go. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Janet, of course you are too. I'm not just talking about the owl. Okay, so we get a little closer, just the face. And then I know I've gotten too close, haven't I? Because the owl baited off or flew off. No harm done. But just lovely, lovely. We've dialed down the sky, got a hint of the barn, and the owl is lit just perfectly thanks to just a little $50 attachment. But you know what? A Kleenex over the end or a milk carton, something translucent, do the same thing. So that's Fill Flash. Easy as that. Nothing to it. Now, did you notice how many pictures I took? I shot and I looked at the back of the camera, made some adjustments and shot again. Get in the habit of shooting, adjusting, shooting, chimping, till you get what you like. Let's go over just a few things you saw me do in that field demonstration. First, dial down your flash. The manufacturers of flash think you must want your light to light your subjects like they're standing on the surface of the sun or something, way too bright. Check the menu settings for how to adjust your flash down. If you have a standalone flash, there will be a way to handle that on the flash itself. Generally, I dial my flash down 2/3 of a stop, a full stop, sometimes more than that. Get your external flash off that camera, by the way. Use a sync cord. It'll soften the light and actually also reduce the red eye effect, which is the bane of photographers everywhere, just getting that flash off the side. More importantly though, it looks more natural. Most of the time, things aren't lit with a light source shooting out of your head, does it? It looks natural to get that flash off to the side. You also saw me diffuse the light with a little tissue at Raptor Recovery. Diffuse, diffuse, diffuse. The softer you can make that flash, the better, and it will look more natural. Also, getting that flash closer to your subject, that'll soften the light too. Now with a softbox, the best thing of all is the softbox you saw me use with that owl. It's a kind of an inexpensive little thing, but I use it all the time on subjects from frogs to babies to flowers, you name it. If I can get close to it, then I'll beautifully light it with that little softbox. You may have been surprised to learn that the closer the light, the softer it is, right? Softness is what we're all about. If for some reason you can't diffuse your flash, the next best thing is to bounce it off something like walls or the ceiling, or even another person or yourself if you're close enough. You can't do this if your flash is bolted into your camera, built in to a point and shoot. But you can if you have an external flash that can tilt or rotate. Let me just show you what I mean. On this flash, the little Nikon right here, check this out. This flash, the head rotates and it tilts all at once, like that. So I can bounce it off the ceiling, I can point it around, go all the way backwards on it. That's the side that's towards me as the operator. Very, very handy. It shouldn't just be used like that all the time. Lots of different ways to do it. Sometimes I'll be shooting with it, I'll turn it and bounce it off my shirt. If I'm wearing a colorful shirt, beautiful reflected light off that. But the subject has to be very close to be able to do that. Listen, if you're shooting inside and you have a unit with an adjustable head, bounce, bounce, bounce. Or put an index card behind that flash head, tape a little card to the back of it. It could be a playing card. And it kicks a little light forward, makes things a whole lot better. Flash doesn't have to travel too far though. It doesn't travel very far at all. You're better off being within 10 feet with a flash if you can. It just doesn't go very far. It really doesn't. So let me be clear. Flash isn't just for nighttime or indoor shots. You got that now, right? You can use it all times of the day, all times of the night too. Let's look at a picture out in the front. Just a flash used to get rid of shadows, try to highlight my kids, especially my girl, because see, the flash doesn't go all the way out back to the boy, just her. Look at that. The sky's darkened, just a little bit of pop in there. We call that fill flash, right? If I'm photographing in the middle of the day, but I want to use fill flash for the shadows, what do I do about the ambient exposure, about the rest of the scene? During the day, the middle of the day, the sunlight's really bright. I'm going to add a little flash in there if I can to really beat the ambient light and soften my subject, and yet bring it out. I'll do that all the time, you bet. I want to take you into the field again now and show you how I work through this situation in my backyard in Lincoln with my two assistants, Rebecca and Grace. I'm working with the ambient light here and with a softbox, so take a look. Okay, so I want to talk about a problem situation when it comes to light. If you look at this scene, the lovely Grace and Rebecca are here. They're dressed up for no apparent reason. And we have tremendous light in the background, and they are in total shade. But this is the situation I want to work in. So what do we do? What do we do? We're totally reverse lit here, what I call reverse lit. The background's lit, they're in shade. Okay, so how do we handle that? When I shoot a picture of them standing there, and I look at the back, I say, wow, is that the wrong way to be? They need to be lit, and the background needs to be darker. So how do we overcome this? What do we do? There are lots of ways of solving this problem. I could use a longer lens and kind of choose my background a little bit more carefully and find a darker spot, and then basically with a longer lens, blur out that background. I could do that. But in this case, I'm going to use flash. I'm going to use a softbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and get close to them, and I'm going to expose the sky a little down. I'm going to turn the house lights down by increasing my shutter speed. I'm going to make the ambient light in the background get a little dark, and then I'm going to brighten them up with this. A good rule of thumb to remember is the closer the light is, the softer it is. So I'm going to put this light right on top of them, and see what we can do and just play with this a little bit and see what kind of effects we can get from what otherwise is not a really usable scene because they're in such deep shade against a bright background. So let's give it a try. Okay, Grace, come on up here. Come right on up, right up to me. Come on up close. I'm also going to try to do a little bit of near-far perspective where one person is ahead of the other. Okay, so right now I've shot a picture. The background is still very bright. That was at about 1/25th. So I'm going to go up to 250 and I'm going to see if that doesn't darken the background some more. Because I want the background dark and I want these guys lit. And it does work. And I'm going to move, so I've got my background exposure just right. And by moving this around, I can create all sorts of different effects. Okay, I can go underneath for horror movie lighting. All right, they don't like that very much, I'm sure. Then I'm going to go off to the side for Rembrandt lighting, which is often the best. I can go above for more police interrogation lighting. Not that either of these gals would know what that's about. I really like this light that's 3/4, kind of off to the side like that. It gives me a pretty good look. And what's happening is, as I've lit them, these trees up against that sky, they all go into these silhouette-y lines. Gives us kind of lines and they recede into the background. So it gives us more of a feeling of depth. Photography in general is a two-dimensional subject. It flattens everything out. You ever see a picture of the Grand Canyon that did it justice? No, because still photographs tend to flatten things out. So a good photographer will always try to add depth, and that means objects in the background that kind of recede away and get smaller, and then you have an object in the foreground that's basically your main point of interest. So I'm going to play around with this. I'm going to change the intensity of this light. It's a flash, obviously. It can do what I want it to do. I'm going to dial it down a little bit more. I've got it on manual, and I had it on a 32nd power. Now I'm going to go to a 64th power and just have it down a little more, just a little bit more. Let's see how this looks now. All right, a little bit too dark. I'm going to put it back on a 32nd, and I'm going to play with the ISO just a little bit. I'm just going to shave the ISO down a little bit. There's lots of ways of getting to this. All right, Becca, come on up close to Grace, because the flash falls off very quickly. When you light a subject with a small flash like this, it doesn't carry 3 feet. You have to have things very, very close. You can basically light one thing. That's the disadvantage with this. But man, when you get it, you really hit a home run. So let's try this. I'm going to put you right there, right behind her. Good, good, good. Okay. Very nice. Let's see how this looks. Much better. I'm going to hold the light out here so both of you are lit a little bit. Look right into the camera for me. Okay. Very nice. Grace, turn your face this way a little bit. We'll get a little bit more light on both sides of your face. Very nice. Okay. So I really like how this looks. Look right into the light, both of you, right here. I'm going to attempt to blind you. All right. Now, let's see. Rebecca, look right here at me. Okay, good. Now I want to switch positions on you guys. So, there we go, just like that. Good. And just to mix it up, we'll put Grace on that side, Rebecca on this side, get a little closer because we know this light can't go both ways. I'm going to cross this light and I'm going to come this way. We're just going to do everything reversed just to see what we can do. Just to see how we can do with this. And that's kind of nice. It is. My background still has plenty of light on it. And these guys have good light on them. And the colors are nice. I'm going to get back a little bit, show a little bit more of the red dress Rebecca's wearing. And I'm going to come in a little closer to them. Good. They don't look like they hate me too much yet because it's nice. It's not too cold outside. It's nice and warm still, even though it's the fall. And let's see, what else can we do? So for this situation, just as far as a nice portrait of these guys, we'll try crowding them a little bit more like that. Just for what we're trying to do here, I feel like this is pretty much what I can do with this light right now. It looks fine, looks fine. Look right here at the camera, both of you. Good, good, good. Rebecca, lift your head up a little higher. Okay, very nice. All right. Now I'm going to back up and I'm just going to see the effect of this light as I get a little farther away. It's just a little darker. So as I back up, I'm going to increase the strength of this light. A lot of flashes will do this automatically. I like to work on manual mode quite a bit if I can. because it just gives me a little bit more control. I'm going to increase the power of this light to an 1/8 power. Shoot there. I'm going to get a little bit lower so I get more of the sky as I've backed up. I want to have the angle right. Okay. That's not quite right. I'm going to get right in between, and I'm going to go vertical to mimic the trees and to get the full waistline of their dresses, the length of their dresses, I should say. And I'll get a little closer. All right, so as far as what we can get here, I feel like I've exhausted this in what we can do right this minute, because they're just two people standing there. But it's a good way to illustrate how we can overcome bad light in the background. Again, you can see what it takes to get a really good shot. You have to work and craft your pictures. Really work it and work it and work it. But it pays off. It pays off. I also use flash for one other thing, freezing action. Besides simply lighting my subject, really, strobe can be lightning fast and can freeze stuff. For example, look at that. A hula hoop frozen in midair is just fine. I popped a flash just long enough to freeze the action. The background's kind of funky looking because I shot this handheld, no tripod. Long, slow shutter speed, 20th of a second, I'm guessing, gives us a swirl of light. Or how about this? A horse trying to knock the blocks off of 3 cowboys who are trying to saddle up. It's all right too. A little bit of flash, a little bit of flash. Let's talk about dragging the shutter a bit. When you're shooting flash in a dark situation, you can have this bat cave effect. Looks like your subject's in a cave. There are 2 things you can do. Use a long shutter speed to collect what little ambient light is there. Sometimes by long, I mean a minute, 30 seconds. Or put other flashes in the background to light it up, which can be a little bit complicated because of the necessary extra equipment, but you shouldn't be afraid to try it. Since I don't want to carry a ton of gear all the time, life's to be enjoyed, not to torture myself, I figure, I'll just drag the shutter. That is, I'll have the shutter open long enough to soak up all the ambient light, and sometimes that's really good color. And maybe we'll have some people in the background that add color too. As long as my subject's in the foreground and is sharp, it's okay if the rest of the world goes into a blurry mess. We call this ghosting, and that's all right to me. If the background's a little jiggly, it's okay. As long as my subject or whatever is in the foreground is sharp, that's what I want. So I leave the shutter open to try to soak up as much light from the background as I possibly can. How slow should your shutter be? I can't really tell you. You'll have to experiment with that. Work the situation. When I'm tinkering with light, I'm constantly checking the display on my camera. I'm looking at that histogram. I know that I have the light going long enough. I know my shutter speed's long, but maybe not too much. I don't want to blow things out. When you're adjusting light, especially flash, having that screen and histogram is a really good thing. It's a definite bonus and one that you want to take full advantage of. Here's all I do. On my advanced SLR, I look to see that nothing is flashing in my viewfinder, meaning it's overexposed. Even if your camera doesn't have that feature, just open up the histogram and look. Is there any information touching the right side of the graph? If so, that means you're clipping the highlights, you're blowing it out. Do you want that? Fine. If you don't, dial it down. Talk to your flash, work with it a little bit, dial things down. Conversely, is most of the information hugging the left side where it's dark? It means your exposure is under, but that may be okay depending on how you want your image to look. All right, for your assignment, I want you to take a series of 4 photos using different introduced light sources. Really be creative and try these both in the middle of the day and at dusk to see what works and when. You should be able to make a picture sing in most situations, provided that you've got a bit of time and good close access to your subjects. Don't be in a rush. Lighting things takes a lot of time to do it well. If you do this correctly, you can take an ordinary scene and make it extraordinary, no question about it. So we've covered the most important issues really of lighting in the last 3 lectures. Found or ambient, color, intensity of light, man-made lighting. We've learned how to manipulate aperture, shutter speed, and ISO settings in order to get the right amount of light into the camera and create an image on the sensor or on the film. We're going to continue to learn more about all these elements of photography through the course, but you got the basics now. Without light, there is no picture. And crafting the light well is the mark of a caring, thinking, and practiced photographer. Do these assignments I'm giving you, not just once, but over and over again. And not only will you have some fun with this stuff, but you'll also be able to train your eye to understand the light you're seeing in the way your camera does. So where do we go next? Composition. What do we want that light on? How do we translate that beautiful 3-dimensional life and world of ours into a 2-dimensional art form like photography? That's a rich topic too, and it'll take us another 3 lectures at least to dig into. Now that you've got the basics mastered, this is what great photography is all about. We will see you then.